My father, Alan Melville, was away for much of my childhood. When home, he was my Apatosaurus, my Amittai, my Abraham. Mother liked to lounge and read. As we moved about so much, she'd always done lots of our schooling. She liked to look across hills. She looked at sunsets through those Octobers while red and bronze leaves swirled or swayed to the leaves below. Because of her, I knew enough Latin always to wish I'd known more. She'd stare along long New York lanes down Pearl Street or Cortlandt, Bleecker or Broadway. We'd lived on all of them since I was born. She'd go wandering in the city, longing to buy, looking so longingly, buying so frugally, not on 6th or 7th Avenue as ladies do today, for then there was nowhere to buy from, but in the side streets, as she walked up through the third of a town and 2/3 country that was then New York, to Madison Square, all the way to the stables at Great Kill before it was called either Thieves' Lair or Longacre. She liked to look at the horses, the wagons, and so did we when we went with her to carry her carefully wrapped bundles. Once, when I was 7 or 8, with trunks and porters up from the boat and presents for all of us that I no longer have, cannot remember, and 3 bags of taffy from the dockside shops, Father had gotten home that morning. That evening, Gertie did herself proud with her brisket and her green beans and her stewed tomatoes and corn and a strawberry pudding to follow. With my alphabet blocks that had come from my mother's mother, though they stay with me in memory, I played on the sitting room rug. My far-seeing and imaginative father was a worldly man. As abreast of worldly ideas, I opine, as the fathers of McCreary and Spencer and O'Neill must have been, names, of course, I had not yet heard. That evening, he and Mother sat up by lamplight beyond sundown. My father with one leg under him on the sofa, and she on the chair beside, leaning forward. In all varieties, still I recall his saying, from all parts of the States, within a day's drive, a great American market building. I call it Melville's. Foods and fabrics and furniture for the ladies, and for the rest toys, tools, even a livestock section, cows and horses, and a slave auction too. Good quality niggers you could come in, check out, and buy right there, since it looks more and more like New York and New Jersey are turning to that sort of thing. The more you've got, the cheaper it is to store them. It's the key to success in that business. They told me in the Florida pens, and when I was there, they've known it for 40 years now in England and Italy and Portugal, this law hovering over their heads about stopping their importation is not even going to bother them, believe me. We don't have enough of that sort of farming to justify field hands up here, anyway, though there's tobacco in Connecticut, and someday there might be more. But all your friends who spend time in the South return with a housebuck or winch they've purchased. Why not sell them here? There's no law against it. We can have a run of veterinaries to take care of both the horses and the blacks. They can make house calls. You get one black bitch, you get one with each black bitch you bought. Mother said, Lucy Selma says she uses her own doctor for her bonzo and Mary Ray. After all, Mary Ray was Hetty's wet nurse when Mary Ray's own pickaninny had to be sold off, as well as their nanny since her Hetty got to be Herman's and Gansworth's age. Pshaw, my father declared. You know their brains are smaller, like Celtic people. I've talked to a man last year in Hispaniola who said he'd known a doctor who'd examined cadavers of bucks from both. He cut into their chests, opened their hearts, and found what anyone might have expected. Both had only 3 chambers, like cows or bulls. Cut them open? That's dreadful. Dreadful it may be, Miss Maria, but that's the only way to lay amidst those abolitionists like your Uncle Sherman believed. chimps are no more the same species as we are, then leopards and tigers are the same species as lions. Father brought his other traveling boot to the sitting room rug, just because when some beast beds another, it yields some griffin or minotaur or hippogriff. They actually have what they're calling tag lions in the London Zoological at Regent's Park, and you can look at the unnatural things if you want. People go on as if this is just some justification for unnatural relations with their house slaves or field hands. Now that's what's really dreadful. I've seen traveling museums all over the continent where they won't let people like you see the results of all sorts of interspecies congress on display. People like me? What do you mean? And why ever not? Because Father leaned toward her with all the love in the world in his voice and his face, even as the features within the neat short beard were bedeviled by the sudden unsteady flicker, lowering and lower through the glass chimney as the whale oil began to run out. You are a lady. It isn't proper. Mother sat up. Now it's my turn to say shaw. You know I spent my summer and autumns on a farm. There was enough congress between sheep and goats, cats and geese, and I won't even talk about dogs and cows and horses and farm boys. We had no half-goats, no half-cats, or frisky pants or piping centaurs running around. I think it's cities themselves that promote such nonsense as you are always trying to articulate about beasts and men, black ones and red ones and Irish ones. You think the Melville General Store is simply city idiocy? No, of course, Alan. Wait, no, that's not what I said. Actually, I think that, picture Miss Maria, and he looked up into the dark as if his dreams were shelved there. Melville's General Store. If you're on a farm, you think about what a farm might be. If you're in a city, you think about what a city could become. It's not nonsense, it's American. Not just any general store. Think of a great one, a grand one, perhaps 2 buildings, even 3, of 2 or 3 stories apiece. The middle one would be the highest, each with a dozen different departments, among them a veritable emporium offering the good of people of New York all the goods they might want. And it would be mine, ours. Oh, Alan, she said, that would be wonderful. I might even have one of those museums on permanent display for the men, of course, who come in looking for tools and boots and fine Connecticut tobacco. And toys? On the rug, I looked up from my block before Mother could make an objection. Tigers and lions, too? Both turned to look down where I sat in the shadow at their feet. You said toys. Will it really have toys? I wanted to know. Will it have toys? My father smiled over his neat short beard, both hands on the knees of his well-pressed pants. It will have a whole department full of toys. I've seen toys all over the world, son, that I could bring back if I had a place like that to put them. Soldiers high as your hip, with clockwork machinery inside that let them walk from one side of the room to the other. Music boxes the size of 2 large sewing kits, with not just one song, but 25. You choose among them by turning a dial, and when you open the cover, it reveals a diorama in which tiny birds fly between trees, and the foil they've crumpled and stretched out for water moves and sparkles between the banks on the machinery beneath it. As well, for boys like you, I've seen boats and carts and winches to load crates from one to another, and dolls, beautiful dolls, with beautiful dresses and china faces as real-looking as women laughing around a candlelit table, and arks with animals that fit neatly against one another like a great puzzle to put together, stored inside before the flood descends. And won't you be happy once we have it? Because you'll be able to get all your toys for free too. And that's because they'll all be mine. As the proprietor's son, you'll get them for an appropriate discount. Oh, Alan, Mother said, don't say that. You sound like a Jew. Oh, he knows I'm joking. joking, don't you, son? I hadn't, actually. To have his reassurance, I turned over another block and tried to hold my jaw closed while my whole head yearned to yawn. I didn't want one of them to say that clearly I was exhausted and must go up to bed. You and your mother and the whole family will be well taken care of, believe me. Believe me, you'll be mercantile royalty if I can secure my imperial palace. Mother pulled her hands back into her lap, looked down and pursed her lips, as if she were about to say something long thought, but also to be slightly inappropriate. Now, we've talked about this before, Alan. I know it's something you really want. I can tell by your enthusiasm. But if you're to have your own business with your name arched over the door, don't you think it would be better to spell it Melville with an E at the end in a more refined way? Laughing, Father sat up straight. Dear Miss Maria, if you want a refined E at the caboose of your name, you shall have it. We shall have it, happily, along with flowered silks and laces from Belgium, syrup from Vermont, and sailor scrimshaw carved in every port in Christendom, and doubtless others too. The lamp began to hiss, which meant it was minutes from extinguishing. Oh, I'll get a candle and take him up. You've been allowed because your father's home. Gansford and Helen have both very wisely gone up before you. Now it's your turn. And she jumped to get a candle in its holder from the mantel. On the rug, really, I was too tired to protest, so I didn't groan, but thought about Melville and tried to spell emporium. Common to both, my M was bright yellow, but now too gray to read. I'd gotten as far as the first three letters, though I lost track of the rest. I think it, and I laughed, a bit cruelly at myself today, for I know I was wondering when we should start to get some of those free toys. Some soldiers, some wooden boats and winches, some goats and cows cast in colored resins, like the one on the shelves in our room upstairs, some geese and foxes and sheep. 2. In that all but forgotten decade of the 30s, my father's true wife was the mercantile business itself. However, as irrational as a child and seductive as a siren, enthralled to whom he boated back and forth to Europe, from New York, from Norfolk, from Boston, leaving us to return to Manhattan, or sometime to my non-hill grandparents, mother's kin, for whom my elder brother Gansford has been named. By then, a bankruptcy had chased us permanently to Albany. Formerly, we had spent a few summers there, but other than the confusion of the move itself, I could not really say what changes were made in our lives. The house was bigger, though there were less people in and out to take care of it. And Father was away more than before. That was because, Mother explained, he was working so much harder. School was something of an oddity for me, but I have my several memories of first day fears, and a new room full of loud boys whom I didn't know, and whom the master, and twice a mistress, would tap a pointer on the desk, calling us to order. I went to several in New York and 2 in Albany, but in truth learned most of my reading from Miss Maria. I do remember Gansford walking me home one day when we saw a bunch of boys coming along the street. They were dirty and grubby. They had curls of hair hanging down beside their faces and little round black caps on their heads of spiky hair. Gansford told me sharply, "Don't go near them, Herman. They're dirty and they smell. They live over on the Jew streets, where they don't have no water, so they have to go get it, but get it all. They eat funny foods and don't learn English." They spoke English in New York, I said, some of them. For now I remembered their carts of cabbages and onions and potatoes and carrots with the strange letters on the sides. That at first I hadn't been able to read at all, and they had spoken some English, though they had accents as recognizable as any of the Irishmen who had been drifting into the country for a decade. If you play with them, Gansford announced knowingly, you'll smell too. A few years on, I'd read in that masterful compendium by the maker and shaker of my own voice, Sir Thomas Browne, that the imputation of a racial smell to the Jews was a vulgar error. He realized it as far back as the 16th century, but then, as must really anyone who's lived near Hebrews in the streets of a 19th century city like Albany without his own castle and library in which to retreat like the good doctor's own, even today, I sometimes forget. In school, you could study their language if you wanted, but already parents were protesting that such was simply not needed in our country anymore by anyone but ministers. But just for my own interest, in New York, I'd studied it for a year. In Albany, I'd given it up, however, because while there were quite enough men, if not women, who could read it and write it, the school could find no Christian who wanted to profess it. And they were not about to hire a Jew to teach young Christians. But that, however, was another thing I didn't know then. Mother herself had neither Hebrew nor Greek, because she felt about languages with different alphabets from English about the way she did for cooking. She knew a few recipes, and she knew many tales, both biblical charisma and pagan myths, and generously told us about them. Though we had always had housekeepers who doubled as cooks, and occasionally Mother would go into the kitchen and, from a sense of duty, make some suggestions about what we were to have or how it was to be prepared or presented, that was still a privilege of wealth. While you may pursue what you have a bent for, life rarely forces you to pursue anything else. Till then, in that spirit, with her own children, Mother had counted their ignorance of domestic tasks as some sort of virtue. In the leafy sunlight splattered over the Albany street, young Jew boys wandered off one way, young Christ boys wandered off another. I wondered what the girls might look like, but you tended not to see them on the street, at least not outside the ghetto. 4,000 books Sir Thomas was supposed to have had. Can you imagine them in one home? 3. When I was 13, in pursuit of that jealous wife's approval, affection, and reward, Father abandoned Miss Maria and us in the cruelest way he could, turned Mother out in effect, as any patriarch might some day he'd once too often got with child, and into a desert of poverty so extreme as to be unthinkable to many. One would assume that jealous wife for whom he'd worked so hard had herself commanded it. He died, and somewhere away from home. I can remember my mother in the front hall with Mr. Abernathy in his dark suit, his hat in his hand, and she before him, her mouth awkwardly open, looking past his elbow. At the top, I'd already heard the words, "Terrible news, is dead on the boat 3 days," before it docked. Without even hearing who for sure it was, my heart had begun to thud as, step by step after step, I came down. "Oh, wait, please, if you'd only..." "Maria, please, Mr. Abernathy," said it firmly on the edge of commandingly. "Come inside with me into the sitting room and we'll sit. I don't like standing here in the hall talking about such painful things." "Neither do I," she exclaimed, but she did not move. Wait, just a moment." Mr. Abernathy waited. Finally, he said, "We'll have to talk eventually, perhaps not now, but at least maybe we might arrange." He drew himself up. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have announced it so boldly, but I wanted to get it out of the way so we could go on and do what has to be done. Believe me, I was as surprised as you when the boy came to wake me in the dark with the news." I reached the bottom of the steps and looked at them beside the front door, still open, though both had moved inside a ways. Mother took little breaths sharply, and I recalled some childhood attempt not to yawn, for though her hand was at her throat, that's what it looked like as she took another gasp, let it out after 4 or 5 seconds, and took another, while Mr. Abernathy tried to fathom my mother's restrained protests against any calmness claiming its place in such a world. Maria, Mr. Abernathy said, let's go in and sit down. He was a head taller than she was, taller than my father, certainly. Please, this is very difficult news for any wife. You are not the first woman I've had to break such tidings to. You will not be the last, really. I know how upsetting this must be. No, I can't sit down. She gasped again. No, I can't, not now. I don't feel well. Then please come inside now. No, she said sharply. Wait, no, I can't. He watched while she swayed like a frond on a cool morning beside a river. Mr. Abernathy took a breath. You must understand, Maria. Alan carried a great deal of debt. I know, a great deal. She gasped again and looked up at him. But he had so many plans. It was perfectly understandable. You, the children, all of you, you were his family, and he loved you very much. But he was supporting you on borrowed funds. No, she said, interrupting. No, I know. Yes, no. I always suspected, but I knew. No, I thought it from time to time, so I must have known. What crossed his face was not sympathy, it was exasperation. No, I can't. Though her face was bent forward, look people in the eye, Herman. Always look people in the eye when you speak. You're not a slave. And though she spoke toward his knee, she said it equally firm, equally commandingly. Wait, please, wait. I don't know what to do. She raised her face to look at him. Wait, it could have been a mistake. Perhaps if we wait, they will send another message. No one's came here yet. Certainly that means Alan asked them to contact me as his lawyer. I was to let you know what happened. 6 people died on board during the crossing. It's just one of the unpleasant jobs a lawyer must do. So I am doing it, clumsily, unfeelingly. I'm sure in your judgment, Maria, but it must be done. Alan was the second to succumb. Oh, and you said he was buried at sea? Oh, dear. You know Dr. Heyman? Mr. Abernathy asked. Yes, Miss Selma retains him. She says he's a wonderful doctor. Wonderful. Oh, Lord. Oh, my Lord. They called him before they contacted me. He wanted to seal off the ship and make everyone stay on it 2 weeks to see if there were more cases of fever. But humanity has prevailed over his odd Swiss notions of medicine. People wouldn't hear of it, and all the passengers have rushed to the safety of their own homes. At least they rousted up a few black boys to run around with messages right away. That's why I'm here. And they just dropped him into the ocean. They couldn't even wait to bring his body back for a proper funeral. Oh, I don't understand. But apparently Captain Daniels agreed with Dr. Heyman's newfangled ideas about contagion. But good sense prevailed. Really, that sort of thing is just heartless. Oh, it's dreadful, Mother said. Do you think now you might go inside and just sit down a little so that you can get your strength back, collect yourself? No, I can't. I don't want to. Was it offered as some explanation for paralysis? You see, I don't know what to do. Exactly, he said, exactly. That's why we must talk. Mr. Abernathy pressed his hat against his chest. His next words were as uncertain as his last had been firm. I should have brought my wife with me. I thought about it. I didn't think this was going to go easily for any of us. But this is not the kind of situation a man can know what to do. My wife would probably be better at this. He took a long, slow breath as if looking for her to speak. Next time I come, I will bring Augusta. And he said, looking down as if to peer No, she said, no. Would you rather I go? No, she repeated, shaking her head and not looking at him. No. Do you want me to stay? For the company, I mean, only that. I don't mind sitting a while in the chair inside. Maybe after a few minutes you'll feel more like, no, she repeated, no, don't stay. I can't talk to anyone now. Her voice got shriller. I can't bear to have you here. Not now. It piloted again. I don't mean you, Mr. Abernathy, but right now you can't bear anyone. Then I'll go, which seems to be what you prefer, Augusta, and I will come back another. No, another repeated. Wait, no, I can't say where I'll go because I can't have it. And here she began to look at him. Mr. Abernathy stopped. Maria, I'll be back. When you feel better. If I can bring Augusta, I will. He took another breath, turned, and went toward the door. It's still so early. I don't like to involve her in this business, but at the bottom it says, gripping the manager so hard my hand after it might